Liz Truss was accused of snubbing a handshake with Rishi Sunak this afternoon as she was declared the winner of their fiercely contested leadership contest to become the next Prime Minister. Look.
Liz, come up on stage.
So that snub marked the end of what's, let's be honest, been an incredibly divisive campaign that saw two of the country's leading Tories turn on each other in a bitter blue-on-blue bloodbath. So can the party put that behind them now and come back together to back Truss, or is that just a pipe dream? To analyse, I'm joined by two of the Conservative media's leading ladies, the Daily Telegraph's Madeline Grant and Olivia Utley. Madeline, wow, I mean, should she have shook his hand to try and say, I'm moving on, at least in public? Or was it actually better for her to be honest and say, look, I'm angry, I don't agree with what you've said during the campaign, you're not going to be in my cabinet, and things aren't great?
I don't know. I think it's entirely possible that she just got a bit overexcited with the moment and just went straight up on the stage. I mean, she did pay tribute to him in her speech. And tried to make some plea for party unity. And in fact, that's what a lot of the Tory grandees and Rishi Sunak have been saying. Of course, as you said, these are just words after what has been, on occasion, quite a toxic campaign. But I think at least on the surface, they are now reiterating that call for togetherness. Whether they can actually achieve that is a different story.
Olivia Utley, do you think they can? Because Rishi Sunak has again dismissed speculation tonight that he might be in a Liz Truss cabinet. Doesn't look like that's going to happen, does it?
It doesn't look like it's going to happen. It sounds to me as though Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak never got on particularly well in Boris Johnson's cabinet. And I think having seen them both over the last few months, we can sort of see how they're quite different personalities. But actually, on the whole, I would say this leadership campaign hasn't been as divisive as some of them have been. It has very much been about the economy, and they feel differently about how to get us out of this cost of living crisis. And they both had serious Conservative solutions. I tended to favour what Liz Truss said more than Rishi Sunak, but I could understand where he was coming from. And I think that eventually they will make up. And to me, I do agree with Maddie. I can totally imagine accidentally ignoring someone's handshake in the excitement of becoming Prime Minister and then thinking afterwards, oh, how could I have done that? How stupid of me. I think it's unlikely it was a deliberate snub.
Yeah, I think you're probably right, actually. But Madeline, you've got to admit a lot of the briefing over the course of the campaign has been toxic. You know, we've had folk like Dominic Raab sent out as sort of Tory kamikaze pilots on Rishi's behalf to completely take Liz Truss's plan to task, and also the prospect of her as Prime Minister being electoral suicide.
Yeah, exactly. And there's been a lot of hostile briefing to newspapers as well. And on the whole, the hustings have been a bit more jolly, but they have been kind of through different channels taking chunks out of each other. But I always think the bigger problem during this prolonged leadership race was simply that it was, I mean, part of my job was to follow many of these hustings. And so you grew used to the fact that they are fabulously repetitive, and they tell the same stories, the same anecdotes, often word for word. And I think that against the backdrop of everything that is happening in the country at the moment, this began to look like, I don't know, quite a decadent sort of a race. It seemed to go on for far too long. And in the meantime, while the Conservative Party is having this internal battle with itself, the country is crying out for direction and guidance through, one of the most difficult periods in our country's history for decades.
Olivia Utley, I think it was important that both candidates were tested, but Madeline's right, isn't she? This dragged on far too long, given the very serious political climate that we're in and the vacuum of leadership.
I think it did, and I think that indulgent is exactly the word for it. I don't really blame Rishi Sunak for that. I think that there was such a fear after what happened with Theresa May, where she was crowned as Prime Minister and she wasn't tested in front of the electorate, and it turns out she was absolutely awful in front of the electorate. people were really worried about that happening again. And from what I've heard, I think actually Rishi Sunak was told that he wasn't allowed to bow out. So I don't really think it was his fault. But I agree that it went on for far too long. And it sounds as though the vast majority of Tory party members voted in the first week or so. So just watching them come out and having to say the same things over and over again. And I feel like poor Liz Truss has had to sort of she was kept coming up with more and more things, and it felt a little bit like she was just trying to fill airspace by the end, and now
exactly.
she's tried herself.
Including dumping the speed limit, which I think she will regret. So actually, I want you guys to pick your most bonkers moment of this campaign, because there have been the odd moment of levity. Madeline, what tickled your fancy over the past 6 weeks?
Well, I think I'm going to rule out almost everything that happened during any of the actual hustings, because, as I say, I could give you a rendition. I'm not going to inflict that on your viewers. But for me, it was when Rishi Sunak reached the final two. Even though he was the overwhelming favourite with MPs, he released this hilarious, slightly Alan Partridge-esque video in which he thanked his campaign team, and he uses quite.
Yes. We have to look at this. We have to look at this. Let's remind ourselves. I loved it.
Guys, we totally smashed it. Well done. Right. If you think back 3-4 weeks ago, I was totally written out of this thing, right? I was totally written out. They thought this couldn't be done. They thought I'd have no place in it. But because all of you showed up, and you showed up on day one, we made this happen.
Madeline, I love that you said that, viral. Olivia, what was your most bonkers campaign moment?
Well, Liz Truss is, bless her, she's not blessed with the most amazingly slick sense of style, which I actually quite like about her. Rishi Sunak, apart from that, was generally very, very polished. And Liz Truss takes a bit of a kick out of knowing that she's not a great media performer. But there was this one moment where she lost the door to the room that she was doing her launch in.
Let's look at this. Let's look at this.
How?
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for the questions. Very good to see you.
No, it wasn't the most assured launch. Well, look, I'm going to be a little bit biased with mine, but of course it was this great moment at the GBNews hustings.
Piece that you contributed to back in 2019, Reform, about budget considerations, has caused...
I think that was 2009.
2009.
Alistair.
I do beg your pardon. It is... it's a typo. It has caused a bit of a stir.
I always thought you had high quality standards at GBNews, but
we do.
It's not the BBC. You know, you actually get your facts right.
Ms. Truss, enough already.
Oh, it's the cackle at the end. I love it. Well, look, Madeline Grant, Olivia Utley, the Daily Telegraph's conservative media leading ladies. It has been a pleasure following this campaign with you, but I am glad we're at the finish line. Thank you both.